Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Move, Crush, Count. I am your host, Scott Joseph. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by J&L Marketing, the digital and direct marketing agency that helps you outsmart your competition so you don't have to outspend them. You can discover their innovative approach at jnlmarketing.com, and that way you can learn and they'll help you move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. Today, I'm thrilled. We don't always bring IT experts on here because I say that jokingly. But Chris is a very sharp man. We got Chris Davidson. He's an expert. He's got 40 plus years experience in IT. And I know right now you're probably sitting out there thinking, IT, oh my gosh, I don't need to hear about IT stuff. But what we're going to talk about is his experience and his knowledge in going from what he calls the information age to the engage age. And in this digital era, we're going to talk about how marketing messages get drowned out by a lot of digital noise, how to overcome all that. And he's going to help walk us through that. So, Chris Davison, welcome to Move, Crush, Count.
Scott, thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, 40 years in IT. You know, when I started in IT, the term information technology had not been invented. It was called computing. It was called data processing in those days. I remember speaking to my dad when this term information technology first appeared on the scene. Son, what's all that about? Why do we need another term? Information technology? Why can't you just call it computing? What's going on here? Yeah, long time ago, but a lot of things have changed, as you alluded to in the introduction.
Well, talk to us a little bit. Like when you talk about information age to engage age, describe that shift for us.
What's all that about? Yeah. So if we go back to what we call the old days of data processing and computing and the like, there was no internet, there were no mobile phones, and information was obtained by going through the yellow pages, phoning people up and asking them to post you a brochure. Unbelievable, but that's how information was obtained. So the power lay with the person who held the information. If you wanted to know something about a particular car, a particular model of Cadillac, a particular model of BMW, Mercedes, whatever, you had to go to the dealer. You had to engage with that dealer and ask them for a brochure. There was no website to go to. So they held the power because they held the information. And the only way you could get the information was from them. So that gave them, if you like, a superior plateau within the relationship between the pair of you. Well, that's all gone because the internet's come along. We've all got websites and the like, and we can pretty much get our hands on any information, at least business information, that we need at any point in time in day. So what does that mean? Well, it means that any prospect that you have for your business, when they first meet you, the chances are very high that they are going to be much more knowledgeable than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. They're going to know more about themselves, their situation, their particular perspective, and therefore the questions they ask will be further through the traditional sales funnel, if you like, looking at it like that. So if one looks at it from that perspective, our responsibility, because we are meeting clients further along the purchasing journey, our responsibility is to engage with them at that point and not engage with them in a digital sense of saying, oh, do you want a brochure? Well, no, they've done all that. They've done all that. They're way past that point. They're at the point of saying, okay, Scott, so this BMW you want to sell me, what I want to know is, can this child seat of this particular model, this particular make, will it fit in the back seat of this particular BMW? They're way past the initial point that they were 30 years ago of asking you for a brochure.
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of times in our pitch, so to speak, in with the agency, J&L, we'll bring this up a lot, this shift and this transition. The consumer has the power now, but there's ways to take advantage of that and use that. But you got to be willing, I guess, to move into this new age in order to do it. And so you talk a lot about how the marketing message is getting lost, right? Or a lot of businesses don't do a good job communicating their marketing message, which, whether it's the information age that you talk about or the engage age that you're talking about, I think that's been a challenge for a lot of businesses throughout. Sometimes business owners get so into the weeds, it's hard for them to communicate their own stuff when they're more worried about processes and client experience and all these other things running their business. Explain what digital noise is, how it impacts a business today, and then once we get past that, then how can they make sure in this day and age their message is clear?
Okay, so we've got 2 points there: digital noise and making sure your message is clear.
Yeah.
Let's deal with digital noise. Imagine that I had a bucket with digital noise written on it, and in my bucket of digital noise would be all what was for me digital noise. Now you have a bucket too with digital noise on it, but the content of your digital noise bucket is different to mine. So digital noise is different for each individual. First point, it's different for each business, and it's going to be different almost throughout the time of the day, really, or the platform that you're using. So, for example, let's say that I am advertising on Facebook. Let's just suppose that my business is advertising on Facebook. As far as I am concerned, all the posts that people go onto Facebook to see, the posts of puppies, kittens, their grandchildren, and what have you, that's all kind of digital noise, because I want them to be looking at my advert. I want them to be clicking on my advert.
Good point. Yep.
So that's kind of my digital noise. Now, of course, now look at it from the user of Facebook. They come onto Facebook to look at posts of puppies, let's say, because they've got some puppies, for example. They're not particularly a cat lover, so yeah, they'll look at the kittens and think that's nice. And yes, of course, they'll look at posts of their grandchildren and what have you. But really, they want to know about puppies. What do you think of my advert? They're not interested in my advert. So for them, my advert is their digital noise. They want to scroll right past it, unless my particular advert is all about puppy training. Then we have a match. They came onto Facebook to look at posts of puppies. They've got some puppies, and lo and behold, here is an advert about puppy training. So in this case, we don't have digital noise there. But if they're scrolling through Facebook quite quickly, which everybody does, what are the chances that my advert, although really useful to them, is going to be lost among all the other digital noise? Quite high. So getting our message to stand out above the digital noise is kind of the issue, which brings us on to your second point, which was the clarity of message and the like. But before I go there, let's just stop there and see if there's anything else you want to pick my brains on before I move on to the second part of your question.
Now, so let's talk a little bit. How does someone get? I have an idea. I want to hear your opinion, though. I want to know, how does someone get their ad more relevant? So it's you brought up the puppy training thing, but take it a step further if you can.
Okay. Well, I just happened to have been through a whole load of this with the book that I've just written on. So I've done a whole load of Facebook advertising and Amazon advertising for the book, and it's really, really interesting. So one thing that Facebook does extraordinarily well is that it allows you to slice and dice your audiences like no other platform. It is absolutely fantastic at that. And I discovered a whole chunk of people that I didn't think would be an audience for my book, but as it happens, the way they responded to the advert, they were. And I pulled up a whole category of person that I just thought, wow, this is really interesting. I had no idea that these people would be interested in my book. But so that was an educational, excuse me, an educational point for me. So I think that I would say if you want to get your message above digital noise, first point is Facebook is a really good platform to start on because it will teach you an awful lot about your potential audiences for any product that you may have. Even though you may think you know what your audience is, I bet you will find some that you didn't know. So that's the first point. And then when you know your audiences, then you can start designing ads that are unquestionably targeted at those specific audiences. So 25 to 35-year-old males are going to respond to an advert differently to 55 to 64-year-old women.
Yeah.
You know, and Facebook will tell you who's interested in your product. And then you can start designing adverts into a really very, very tight niche. And that will unquestionably help you cut through the digital noise issue. You have to be super, super specific nowadays. Whereas in the old days, we could put a big billboard post at the end of the road, and everybody would drive past it and some people would look at the billboard. Nowadays, we have to be super specific.
Well, and to add to that, and just so people are clear on that, you have the ability, let's say you're doing an ad for a politician, right? This is an easy example to give. So if I want to target, if my candidate, say Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. Let's say we want to target the independent or the undecided voter, right? So we find that audience of undecided, so to speak. And I'm using this without going in and looking at the audiences, so it can apply to anything, what the example I'm going to get. But then I want to target, let's say, whether it's men or women, let's just say men between the ages of 35 to 55. So now I've got that circle audience, right? And there's a slight overlap. So I've got the audience that is 35 to 55. Then I've got the audience that is independent or undecided. And out of those two audiences, there's a percentage of those that are both, that fit in both, correct? There's that overlap. I would add in a third audience. So when you talk about getting super specific, a third audience, and maybe I know that there's an interest there, or my ad might be about gun control or gun freedoms, whatever it might be. And so now there's an overlap between the three. In other words, I'm looking for all the people that have this interest, this age range, and are in this voting sector. So out of the three circles, I want the audience that only applies to all three. So now I've got a very tight audience, but my ad, right, can be very specific. If I'm going after gun freedoms, that's going to be talking about freedom, the right to own your arm, or your, right to own a gun. You're between this age, and I might have an ad that sits there, men between ages 35 and 55 deserve the right to have this gun, and boom, and they're independent, right? So now I've got an ad that's specific to that category. And is that what you're talking about when you're talking about being very specific?
Absolutely.
And relevant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I don't know if everybody, I think a lot of the ads I see, I think you make a mistake. And to your point, I think you're 100% correct. I think you make a mistake when you try to be everything to everybody.
Absolutely. Which was kind of where I was coming, kind of where I was coming to with your second question on the clarity of the message is that too many businesses are still kind of in what I call 20th century mode. They're still in the broad brush billboard at the end of the road. Here's the generic message. This is what we do. Whereas a lot of 21st century businesses have moved beyond that. And that is very true where I live in the UK, in the trades, in the building trades. When I was a little boy, you would have in the yellow pages, you would have a general builder. We don't have general builders now. we have roofers, we have window and conservatory specialists, we have, and the trades always used to exist, plumbers, electricians, and what have you. But even the trades are now getting very, very, very specific within exactly what it is that they will do. And which means they can target their customers a lot more tightly. And of course, you can have one business targeting multiple customers. So a building company could say, okay, let's go after all the roofing business in this area and all the fencing business in this area and all the conservatory business over there. No reason why not, but they have to be specific.
Now, over in the UK, do they show up on time and complete the projects on time?
Some do. There's a bit of variability in that. Yeah.
we still struggle with that a little bit. All right. So we've kind of covered on what some things people can do to make their ad stand out a little bit, be more relevant. And relevance is the key there to their interest. So that also would be a mistake that people make by not doing it. But I want to dig into the mistakes further. What are some other common mistakes you see businesses make that don't allow like their advertisement to kind of rise above that noise?
Well, the biggest mistake, frankly, is the disconnect between the advert and where the traffic goes to, the landing page that people end up on. So having engaged all the necessary consultants to help them with Facebook ads and all the rest of it, they will create beautiful, well-targeted Facebook ads, Amazon ads, maybe LinkedIn, whatever the platform is, it doesn't matter. But then they fall down on driving that traffic into either a generic page or a page that is in some other way not where that prospective client was expecting to land. And unless there is complete congruity between the advert and where I land after I have pressed click, it's not going to work. People are not going to tolerate it. They'll be gone in a second or two.
Well, I was going to ask right then and there. So let's say you're running an ad to me and I click on it and I get to your landing page. With all your experience and knowledge, how much time passes, how many seconds before I'm making a decision? I'm bouncing or I'm scrolling through this page and trying to figure out more?
It's a couple of seconds. I mean, it's absolutely no more than that. And in case your listeners don't know this, relatively recently, Google did formalize that load speed is a mid-ranking factor. So they measure the load speed of websites now, and they absolutely want your websites loading quickly, particularly on mobile devices, and everybody's going to have a challenge with that. So one little golden nugget that I would say to you is that if you have a super duper beautiful looking website, which has a full width video in the header, make sure that full width video is not showing on the mobile version of your website. Forget it. Just load up a static image because it's going to load quicker. And so if you are building websites and the like, and you go to have a meeting with your website designer and they show you this beautiful looking website on a 26-inch monitor and you go, oh my goodness, that looks absolutely gorgeous. Get out your mobile phone and load it on the phone. Because that's what matters. That's what Google's going to look at. Because nowadays, the other thing we have to remember is that Google is only indexing the mobile version of your site. They're no longer interested in the desktop. They only index the mobile version of your website.
Interesting. All right. Let me ask you this question because you brought up a point. All right. So let's say I go to this page and I bounce because, like you said, only got a couple seconds to grab their attention. Most business owners, in my opinion, think that's the only cost. In other words, well, my site didn't load fast enough, or when they got there, it didn't immediately grab their attention for the reason they clicked, whether it was a display ad, whether it was a search ad, whatever. But here's the other thing that it cost them, and I don't know if they factor this in. When people bounce off your page, just like Google's measuring that speed, that load speed, they're also measuring the bounce rate. And where it costs you, not only do you not get sales when people bounce away or leads and opportunities, your ads start costing more. Because I can sit there, as a marketer, right? I can sit there and get higher quality traffic, more traffic for a lot of times for the same or less. So when we talk about when J&L Marketing talks about outsmarting, not outspending, one of the things you got to do is you got to have, like what you just said, a very relevant landing page that as soon as someone gets there, they're paying attention. They know they're in the right spot. And for one reason, you're going to have higher conversion rates, right? That'll lead to more sales. But the second thing is your bounce rate scores well, which in time allows me to pay less for ads. I don't have to pay as much to be in that one spot or that two spot or that third spot. So people don't factor that.
That is absolutely true. And one of the things that you folks will want to consider as time moves forwards is that Google is rethinking the term bounce rate. So what they're going to be measuring as we move forward is an engagement rate. I just forget the precise terminology. I think it's engagement rate. So you land on the page and then they're going to be not just measuring the bounce off, but which is, by the way, let's be clear about that. A bounce rate is when somebody leaves the site having not moved through any other page. They leave from the site leave from the page they arrive on. But nowadays, Google's saying, well, okay, when somebody lands on this page, we want to start measuring their engagement. So we want to say, okay, are they scrolling? Are they clicking? What's going on here? Before they just leave. So bounce rate itself, Google is rethinking. But the principle behind what you say is absolutely correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if someone's bouncing, they're sure in the heck not engaging. So I mean,
unless in the early days, of course, in the early days before you had clickable phone numbers and the like, people were coming to websites just to look for a phone number. So you didn't necessarily know that a bounce rate was a bad thing. A high bounce rate was a bad thing. But anyway, those days that's also history, because you can come in and hit the dial number. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about it. It's because you kind of gave a nice segue into this engage age with the way Google's looking at bounce rates now and look at an engagement rate now. So what can a business do to ensure that their website effectively communicates their message and engages the target audience?
First thing you've got to do is that you have got to meet them where they are. And the second thing you've got to do is that you have got to be of immediate use to that person at that point in time, whatever it is that they are trying to do. So, for example, what does one traditionally do with a lead magnet? Give me your name and email address, and I will give you my top 10 tips for whatever it is, or my PDF report on whatever. Those are examples of generic information. Either it's an industry report or it's my top 10 tips of building a website, whatever. It's generic. It's not necessarily useful to that person for where they are at that particular point in time. Now, I can get, as anybody else can, get generic information from anywhere on the internet without surrendering my name and email address. So lead magnets of this generic type are falling in popularity and are really not going to be useful. So I wouldn't be paying money for an advert to drive people to a landing page that was offering something generic, because I don't think you'll get very good sign-up rates anymore, because people, customers are getting smart. And if they do sign up, more often than not, they're going to be using an email address that they only ever use for signing up for free information. So it's not going to lead to any engagement anyway. All it's going to do is fill your active campaign account with a whole load of dead email addresses, and iContact or Active Campaign are very happy to bill your credit card every month for disengaged but subscribed people. and they're never going to be clients of yours, so you don't want them in your list anyway. So what's the point of doing that? So that whole thing for me is just, I can't see any point in doing it. I think it's wasting money further downstream because you're paying for a database of people who will never be a customer, and it's just it's one of these false statistics. People say, oh, I've got 5,000 people on my list. I've got 10,000 people on my list. I don't care. If your open rate's only 12%, it's not doing you much good, is it?
Right. So let me ask you this.
I'd rather have 250 people and an open rate of 85%.
Give us an example then. I haven't done the math in my head yet on the 10,000 to 12% versus the 250 to 85. But give me an example though. If you're saying the landing page, and I need to capture these emails, but more importantly, quality emails. And how I'll define quality is two things: a primary email that someone actually uses often, so they'll see your stuff. And then two, an email, a person that is actually interested in potentially doing business with us down the road. Right. All right. So if generic lead magnets, are you saying, are dwindling in terms of their value to a business, give us an example of what they should be doing.
All right. So I'll give you an example, and I'll give you the example actually of what I do, because I know it works. I know Perfect. It works well. So this is what happens, and I would say everybody else can just copy this example and put it into their own model. Somebody arrives on a website. At that point, make a promise that you're going to give them something that's going to be useful to them without them surrendering any information at all. That's the first point. So with no sign up necessary, you can get whatever that is, right? Whether it's dietary advice or advice to do with your new roof that you're considering putting on your house, or your new conservatory, or whatever it is, you promise to give them information that is specific to them with no need for them to sign up.
Real quick question. Are you saying to do that in the ad, something that drives them to the site, or once they're already there?
So you can promise it in the ad, this is available for no sign up, but certainly right. When they get to the landing page, you reinforce that promise, because you're going to have organic traffic coming in. So on the page, you say you can get this, no sign up necessary.
Perfect.
So they click the button. And you start asking them questions. Okay, if you want to know an estimate for how much your new conservatory is going to cost, then reasonably I'm going to have to ask you some questions to come up with that estimate. So let's talk about your new conservatory. Please please answer these following questions. And we go through some questions, whether it's your new conservatory, your new roof, a diet plan, whatever it is. We go through the questions, and then we say, okay, that's great. On the next screen, you will find the estimate for your conservatory, or the estimate for your diet plan, or whatever it is. They click the button, and on the next screen, it says your conservatory is going to cost approximately $8,500 plus or minus whatever. So they have an answer. Then it says, by the way, we have got a detailed PDF based on the information you've already given us. You don't need to tell us anything else. We've got a detailed PDF that breaks down all the different things that will go into your new conservatory, and some additional things you might want to think about. Would you like a copy of that PDF? If yes, name an email address. At that point, they've qualified themselves in, because they've spent 10 minutes doing a survey. You already know an awful lot about information about them. If you are genuinely useful to them, they're thinking, well, these guys seem to know an awful lot about conservatories, and we are going to buy one. So why don't we just get the PDF?
Yeah. You're also, not only are you gaining information that hopefully you're using down the line, you're building trust right out of the gate. And what I love about it is, when you mentioned earlier, as Google starts to measure engagement rank, is people are engaging and filling out this survey. That's helping you there as well.
Yep. And also you mentioned trust. You're building trust right out the gate, and we know that Google is modifying how they look at websites, focusing much tighter on trust. So trust is going to become a bigger and bigger thing for Google. And so their page rankers, their page raters, I beg your pardon, the 10,000 or so people that Google employ to look at pages. That's all they do, look at pages of websites all day. And they look at pages according to a set of criteria that Google freely publishes and gives to all of us. And we can look at it and we can see now that trust is smack bang in the middle and everything else is surrounding trust. So our job is to build trust with people. So we build that trust by being immediately useful to them, not holding them to ransom for name and an email address, saying, I'm going to help you where you are right now with some useful information. And it's going to be so useful to you that you will trust me to the extent you'll give me a name and email address for some further information.
All right. So you gave an example, and in the example you gave, it was basically, calculation of a potential cost, whatever. All right. So, but let's say someone's not selling, that's not their thing that they want to give away. What are some other examples of good examples that you think are effective in terms of this information that you would build trust with before you try to get the email?
Well, I think, right. So hang on. That's a really good question. Let's go backwards one point and say, do all businesses need lead magnets? That's the first question we need to answer.
Good
right?
point.
Because the answer to that is no. So we need to clear off that, and then I'll come back to the question you've just asked.
Okay.
So as regards lead magnets, it is true to say that not all businesses need them. Most do. But what would be examples of businesses that do not need lead magnets? Examples would be businesses where the prospect has reached some trigger point. There's a trigger event which causes them to say, okay, I need a solution immediately now. So what would an example be? There you would have all the psychological services, counseling and the like. Some trigger event happens, maybe to me, to my partner, to someone in the family, whatever. And I say, okay, we need to speak to somebody now. Don't need a lead magnet there, because I'm going to go to a website. I'm going to start searching, unless I know somebody automatically. I'm going to start searching. I'm going to come through and find somebody's website. Maybe I will have been referred there by a business directory or whatever. I go through this. Okay, this sounds, I'm going to ring this person up and speak to them. And if it works out, they're going to get the business because there's a trigger event. Another example would be you arrive home, and at least in the United Kingdom, if the police prosecute you for jumping a red light or going through a speed camera or something, a letter arrives in the post in a brown envelope and it lands on your floor, and you oh, heck, I have a notice of intended prosecution from the police. I need a solicitor. I need a lawyer. It's a trigger event. I don't need a lead magnet now from a lawyer. I need a lawyer, full stop. It's as simple as that. So it is true to say that there is a number of businesses that do not need lead magnets. If you are in one of those businesses, then what you have to focus on is building trust the moment somebody arrives on your site. What does that mean? Social proof. So when somebody arrives on your site, they need social proof that immediately says you're really good at your job. You're a really good counselor. You're a really good psychologist. You're a really good motoring lawyer. All right. So that's businesses that do not need lead magnets. Okay, now to come back to lead magnets in general. The point I'm making is that,
well, what I was asking is, you gave the one about the calculation.
Yeah.
The step before you would ask for the email. What are some other examples? Like if someone's got a business where they're like, doing a calculator, that type of stuff, what other information could you give that would be valuable? I guess
so it's a fair question, but I'm going to come back to you and push back a little bit by saying that when I'm working with clients, I've I've yet to meet a client who is completely stumped by this question. And the question I say is, okay, so I'm betting if I asked you to come up with between 6 to 10 questions that you would ask pretty much every prospect, and those were open questions so that we could score them on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, you could probably do that. And every prospect says, yeah, of course I could. I qualify prospects all the time. Okay, so write down what those questions are. Give me the best possible answer. Give me the worst possible answer. And I'll come up with a questionnaire. Boom. So all of these things can be broken down into numbers, but what it forces clients to do when you ask them this, and this I think is the point that you were kind of coming to. What it forces people to do is that it forces them to get very, very tight on who they're targeting, and that's where a lot of business owners become uncomfortable, because you're forcing them into a little bit of a box, and they're thinking, oh, I want to resist being forced into this box because that's going to restrict the number of people who are going to respond, and I'm going to miss out on all of this business. Actually, no, the reverse is going to happen. You're going to collect more people, but in a tighter niche, and they're going to trust you more, and you will get more business in the long term. If you're too broad, you won't be able to come up with that kind of questionnaire. But if you're too broad, then you're going to stay too broad, and you're not going to get the prospects anyway.
Good point. So you recently published a book, Why Your Website Doesn't Work. Love the title.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, I would assume the insights, the strategies you're sharing in the book have to do with some of the common mistakes on websites.
Yeah.
So help us out a little bit. Walk us through some of the top things that in that book that you think the audience definitely needs to walk away with and knowing.
Okay.
Without giving so much that we still want them buying your book.
So let me preface this by saying that since 2017, my colleagues and I have run an annual digital footprint survey where we have analyzed thousands of websites every year. So we really do know what is going on. The biggest area is that the websites are not tightly enough focused. The content focus is too weak. So we have to start talking about the ideal client. And I'm quite particular with my words there. I know people talk about dream clients. They talk about perfect clients. I don't like talking about dream clients because dreams aren't real. You wake up in the morning, your dreams are gone. I don't like talking about perfect clients because no one is perfect. No one has the perfect business and no one has the perfect client. But there is the ideal client who, although not perfect, the ideal client would be the client that if you gave me that client multiple times, I would serve that client happily forever until I retire and sell my business. That's your ideal client. Now, everybody can describe that person, but a lot of people dislike being they feel that they're being forced into a corner when you ask them, who is your ideal client? There are several reasons for that. We've all just been through the COVID pandemic, businesses all over the shop, and people are scrabbling around for business a bit. Okay, understand that. So there's a bit of, I need the business, I'll take the contract. But actually understand that, but let's keep a focus on the ideal client, because the definition of the ideal client drives our marketing strategy, because that's where 80% of our marketing effort and budget goes on the ideal client. You'll pick up other ones. They'll come along in the wake of a passing ship. Other ones will come in, and you can decide when they arrive whether you want to deal with them or not. But focus on the ideal client. Promise to be useful to that ideal client. The moment he or she arrives on your website, make that promise above the fold. Above the fold is bit of a concept that's going out of vogue now because of mobile phones, but you certainly don't want to be people to be scrolling for too long on a mobile phone. Land them on a mobile phone. First scroll, first time they move their finger, they've got to see that you're being useful to you, useful to them, and how you're going to do it. So that's the biggest issue. After that, there's a slew of kind of performance related issues, and load speed and the like, and then after that you come to issues that are more to do with longevity, more to do with search engine optimization and the like. But the biggest issue is getting the focus correct.
Let's talk about AI. How do you see that impacting websites and content on the sites and engagement?
Yeah. So this is a great question. First, we have been here before. That's the first point to remember. Lots of people think, oh my goodness gracious me, this is such a monumental change. How is society ever going to recover from something like this? We've never experienced it before. Well, of course we have. What do you think happened when we went from valves to transistors? It completely changed our society, and it completely changed a whole ton of industries. What do you think happened when we invented penicillin? My father was a surgeon. He was in the Far East after the Second World War. He remembers penicillin arriving. It was reserved for military use at the time. It was for him, it was a total revolution. It was something that they would get poor soldiers coming into the hospital, and you would know within 3 or 4 days these poor people were going to be dead. But that just then didn't happen. 4 days later, they were rolling up their bed and walking out. And for Dad, it was a miracle. So society has seen this before. So this is not kind of let's keep calm. This is not something that we haven't dealt with before. All right. In technical terms, we dealt with it when the personal computer arrived. Everybody said it's going to be, oh, that's it. The computers are, well, we're still here. Everything's still working. Now let's come to AI. The reason why it's different this time round is because it's come up quickly. It's come up upon us very fast. Number two, it's very easy for everybody to engage with it.
Yeah.
So that's what makes the difference between penicillin, PCs, and valves and transistors and what have you. But we have dealt with similar circumstances before. What AI will do is that it will help professionals do an exceptionally good job quicker. In the same way that a JCB will help a professional person dig the foundations for a home quicker than a dozen guys with shovels. It will help a professional person do a good job quicker. That's the biggest contribution it will make.
I 100% agree with that. I'm sitting here thinking, for all these people that are fighting or resisting it and this and that, I said, listen, the agencies that are out there, it's not that they're going to rely on AI to replace them. It's the agencies that are going to excel are going to be the ones that are going to be when smart people use it and use it consistently, to whether it's to become more efficient, more productive, produce better quality work. But I think people that fight that, I think they're going to get blown away quick.
I absolutely. I run a what I call EASO, EASEO, Easy Affordable SEO. It's a service that I run. One of the outputs from EASO that clients get is an AI generated blog post. It's 400 or 500 pages long. It has all your keywords in it. Now, is that a perfect blog post that you can put straight onto your blog and run off and do other things? Not really, but if you're in a hurry because you've got to go somewhere, you probably could do that. But what it's really meant to do is to help clients, instead of looking at a blank screen going, what the heck do I write in this blog post now? It says, well, look, here's the first 400 words. It's got all your keywords in it. It's pretty well optimized. Just add another 400 or 500 words and you've got a 1,000 word blog post. Well, that's a heck of a lot quicker to do than start from a blank screen.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where I think this technology is going to help.
Yeah, I agree more. So talk to us a little bit, like, all right, so if engagement's so critical, I mean, are you guys playing around with AI at all? Like, how do you see it helping with any of that?
Well, so we're playing around with it in that it's built into the
Into the
service.
blog.
It's built
Yeah.
into the service that I offer, and that's all I use it for at the moment. In
Are
terms
you
of,
doing anything with their
in terms of delivering information to clients, that's all I use it for at the moment. I use it internally for doing for brainstorming with the team. So we'll sit down and we'll put some information in there, but what that does is that produces content for us that we then play around with internally to produce something that then goes out to clients. We don't actually have if you like, the only AI interface that our clients have directly into AI is that comes out of the ESO blog post generator.
So, if my computer's open, ChatGPT's open. So in other words, it is always open for me. I can tell you, I'm doing a lot more shows. I'm recording a lot more episodes. And part of the reason is, in the past, I used to dread the preparation, because you got to prepare. You got to know your guest in advance. You got to know the right questions to ask them. You got to do your research. I'm going to give my hack real quick, what I do. I hope you like these questions so far. So,
great.
This is, but I don't rely 100% on it, right? But I'll take your bio, for example. I'll put it in. I'll say, this is the theme of the show. This is the talking points. This is what I want my audience to get out of it. This is the goal. Give me 20 questions that you think would be good questions. And then I'll go through those and tweak them, right? And adjust them, and some just eliminate, right? So, but man, it's cut my prep time to virtually nothing.
Yeah,
compared to what it was.
It's helping a professional do a better job quicker. Absolutely. Yeah. But what it wouldn't do is to help somebody who has never run a podcast before produce a perfect show.
Yeah.
That I think is the difference, So I don't think we're there's any chance of us being replaced quickly. But it is going to help us do better jobs quicker, for sure.
So I think there's always, anytime I listen to something, whether it's a workshop or a webinar or something, I think conceptually it's easy to get it. In other words, you know what? I hear what he's talking about. You got this information age to engage age. I agree with all that. And you know what? I kind of agree with the suggestions Chris is making, and he's made some good points here. But then when a business owner, it's time to actually integrate some of this stuff in and start doing it, it gets bogged down and then usually forgotten. So share with us some success stories where you have seen a business, I guess, transition from information age to engage age. And then, like, what were some of the key steps they did to make that transition?
Key steps is identifying the perfect client and then focusing tightly on being useful to them with super content. So as an example, we have a client here who does happen to be a motoring lawyer, a motoring solicitor, as we call them in the UK. So he doesn't have a lead magnet. But what he does have, and he doesn't have a particularly big website in comparison with some of his competitors. There are some of his competitors out there who have hundreds of pages. And our client doesn't have hundreds of pages. But what he does have is that he has extensive blog posts. I mean, we're talking about a blog post being 1,500 words. We're talking about each blog post having its own miniature table of contents. All of those tables of contents are hyperlinked to the content of the blog post. All the blog posts are interlinked, etc. So you see how this works. So what does that mean? What that means is that if I become a prospect for needing a motoring solicitor because I'm going to be prosecuted for some motoring infringement, whatever it is, and I enter the search term of the potential infringement into Google, if it happens to be one of the terms that a client is interested in, you're going to see his site. He is definitely going to be in the first 3 organic returns because that's what he pays us for. So he's going to get the traffic onto his probably a blog post. It might be one of his service pages, but wherever you arrive on his site, that page that you arrive is going to be of so much value to you that you're just going to read it. Because the only other thing you've got in your hand is a piece of paper from the police saying that they're going to prosecute you. And you want to know what to do. And this guy tells you exactly what to do, then gives you a link of where to go to, then says, no problem, ring this number, we'll help you out. Boom. And so people click the button and they ring. And that's what happens.
Wow. So we go through, at least, my background is I started off in the auto industry. And when we talk about marketing, I always want to talk about attribution. Like, what was the reason this person, what's the real reason? Who gets the credit for this lead? Who gets the credit for this sale, right? And I always tell our auto clients, listen, if you added up all the people that are taking credit, if you got a dealer out there selling $200 or 300 cars a month, I said, and if you add up all the people taking credit, all the vendors taking credit for those sales, you're really selling 2,000 to 3,000, right? So they all want to know, like, for you, how do you measure success when it comes to an engagement strategy as it relates to a return on whatever investment you're making with your time or money?
So for the motoring solicitor, it comes down to phone calls, ultimately phone calls and emails. Yeah. And he tracks. He has a spreadsheet that he tracks, and he's a very clever chap. And he asks every one of his prospects, "How did you find me?" And 75% of them say the internet.
Yeah.
So that is good enough for him, and it's good enough for me. So he absolutely definitively knows that his website is driving 3/4 of his revenue is coming straight off that website.
Yeah. And so, sometimes keeping it simple it's very easy to overcomplicate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then if you have got a lead magnet, then you're looking really at the engagement with the lead magnet. That's really
I love what
comes down
I
to.
love what, and I love what you said earlier, and I wrote it down. With no sign up, you can get boom. So you're giving a promise, you're building trust right out of the gate. You're also grabbing, if it's relevant to why they're there, right? If it serves a purpose, if it provides value, it really answers one of the questions I was going to ask, and that is, how do you capture and maintain their attention? So right out of the gate, if you're giving me something and there's no obligation on my part and it's a relevant value to me, and that grabs my attention because you've communicated it so clearly and provided a big benefit right from the start.
Absolutely. So I have a bit of fun with my clients, and if they go to my website, it says right up front, it says WTF to OMG, and people think, well, that's a bit strong, Chris. And of course, I tell them a moment later that WTF actually stands for weak target focus. What else did they think it stood for? And OMG stands for online marketing gravitas. That's what you want to do. You want to get from WTF to OMG. And the button underneath says, test my website for WTF. No sign up required for an overall score. Dead simple.
I love that. So I was going to ask if we have a good a frequent guest on the show. Sometimes he helps me co-host, Sandy Saram, and he's got a famous saying that he says, especially when he likes something. I love that. I wrote that down. I don't know why I write things down when we're recording everything.
Oh,
it helps me remember.
It's part of the memorization process, isn't it?
That's
I think
right.
it just, yeah.
So he always likes to say, listen, I'm going to give you credit for that the first 2 times I use it, but after that, I'm taking it. I'm going to take it and remember it. So the first 2 times I use this, you'll see your name attached, but after that, I might leave it off. All right. So is there anything we haven't talked about when it comes from transitioning from this information age to the engage age, when it comes to websites, improving our marketing ROI, whatever you want to say that you feel like the audience needs to know about?
I think I think there's one area we perhaps need to look at briefly. It's quite a lot of it in the book, but web business owners get overwhelmed, quite understandably, by the many different niches, sub niches of help they can get from the IT industry. They've got systems architect, business analyst, a website designer, and a website developer. What's the difference between these people? And they don't know who to ask for help, and they end up asking wrong people, and they get the wrong thing. They spend a lot of money, and nobody's happy. So, I've developed, based on the thousands of websites that my colleagues and I have looked at, I developed a thing called the Website Effectiveness Framework, and that breaks down everything that goes on in a website into 5 different categories, 5 different buckets, 5 different tiers, if you like, of activity. And if what the Website Effectiveness Framework does is that it allows people to see where they need the help, and it allows them to then go and get the right people. So it saves time, it saves money, it gets the right things fixed quickly. That's what the framework is all about. And I then developed an assessment that allows people to see whereabouts on that framework their website sits, so they know what they should be fixing first. That's the major thesis that's explained in the book.
Well, I encourage everybody to do that, and we're going to give them an easy way to find you real quick. I'm going to put it at the bottom. You tell me. I will make sure I got that everything spelled right. chrisdavidson.co.uk, correct?
Yep, that's me. chrisdavidson.co.uk. Yep, absolutely.
All right. Listen, I love the show. That's a wrap for this Move Crush Count episode. But I'm going to tell you, I could talk to you for another couple hours, especially when we talk about engagement and all this other stuff. But I want you. Can they get the book here, or do they need to go to Amazon or something like that?
The book is on Amazon. It's actually everywhere. It's on Google, on Amazon. It's in Barnes and Noble. It's wherever you get your books, you can get the book. But it's certainly on Amazon. Yeah.
And do you have a book with you handy you can hold up so we can see it?
Yes, I do. There you go.
It's Why Your Website Doesn't Work. Chris Davidson's the author, everybody. If you got some value out of this, I highly encourage you, which I did. It's very rare I write 3 pages of notes, but I did that today. What's funny is I'm in the process of building a new website for a different company I'm starting. So I'm sitting here. Oh, I got to make sure I talk to them about this.
Okay. Well, if you go to the website chrisdavidson.co.uk, in fact, you can go directly to the website effectiveness assessment. You can run the assessment. That's the button that's there. It's completely free. Beautiful. Run the assessment. You'll get an overall score right up front. Don't have to sign up. And if you do take the PDF, then you get all the individual scores, and then you get the whole user manual for the rest of that software is all in the book. So it's the whole lot's there. It's a complete toolkit. It fixes the problem.
That's awesome. So guys, you just heard it right there. If you want to test your website out, find out how effective it is, go to chrisdavidson.co.uk, and then he'll do that for you for free without having to sign up for anything. So that's a nice thing. Don't have to submit that email if you don't want to. So once again, thank you very much for sharing with us today, man. I got a lot out of this episode. I'm sure the audience did. If you enjoyed this episode, Also, we'd like you to visit movecrushcount.com, subscribe so that way you can catch up on all our past episodes and not miss any future ones. And, we live stream a lot. So make sure you find us, whether it's on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so that way you can stay up and stay in touch with the community. Special shout out to our sponsor, J&L Marketing, the digital and direct marketing agency that helps you outsmart your competition so you don't have to outspend them. Check out jnlmarketing.com today so you can discover how they'll help you move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. Guys, it's a fun episode. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.